Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. And today what we're discussing is the Eufy solar panel that I actually purchased a few weeks back now. This is a solar panel that's designed to work with all of the Eufy battery powered cameras. Although I didn't actually get this product installed straight away, I did do a quick unboxing, but basically I have had it installed. And the reason basically I've not really made any follow-up videos on it is because I've been having a few problems with it. So in order to understand where this is sort of coming from, you have to actually go back in time a little. So originally when I first set up these cameras, obviously I set everything up and I've made several test videos in terms of how they're performing, as well as battery life, motion detection, all that kind of stuff. And I made a few sort of interval videos, maybe after a month, after 2 months, that kind of thing, just giving updates in terms of how they're performing, all of the basically downsides as well. And then I did also make a video where I pointed out that one of the cameras was actually defective. So the front driveway camera, the one that points towards the front of my house, keeps an eye on my driveway as well as the sort of entrance for my house. The charging port on that particular camera had become all corroded. The little rubber grommet that you actually insert into it in order to try and protect the charging port, that was fully pushed in. We hadn't really had any freezing cold weather. Even the rain wasn't really torrential rain or anything like that back then. So at that point it wasn't really clear as to why it was happening. It wasn't until I actually took the camera down and I inspected it, I put two and two together, which I pointed out in one of my other videos as well, which was the rubber that they used was basically, it's just too flimsy. The protection that they put in place, it's, even when it was pushed in, it would literally come out very easily. It wasn't forceful in terms of its grip around the actual charging port. And for that reason, I believe Eufy are probably aware that obviously some of these cameras are going to become defective and be unable to charge up after their first usage, which is, I'm guessing, why they reacted in the way that they did, which was to basically send out a replacement straight away, no questions asked. In terms of their customer service, obviously they've been very good on all the products that I've had with them so far. The problem with this particular product is slightly different, however. So I've actually had another video that I posted a while back where I ordered a generic charger that was advertised as being for the Eufy cameras, so it actually had my particular model listed in the title. And the reason that matters is because it was advertised to have a rubber grommet. So the difference between this and basically every type of generic charger that's out there on the market is, obviously, having opened this, the surface, so the actual solar panel surface itself is slightly different, in the sense that it's kind of this gridded sort of 3D sort of surface. So it's slightly different to the actual panel material itself. But the main difference is the fact that it comes with a little rubber grommet that seals. There's other good things about it. So in terms of the cable management, that's quite clever in the way that they worked it in. Having installed it, however, it's not the best in terms of how you actually put the solar panel on. And I only realized that once I actually went to try and install a third-party one, which is actually a lot easier. I'll do a different video on that because that needs me to actually take both of them apart, and basically that's obviously a lot more time, and that's something that I'm still testing. So essentially the main issue that I'm having with this particular charger is the fact that it's not doing anything on the camera that I've actually connected it to. So the camera I've hooked this up to is the one that was basically covering my back garden. So for those of you who have followed the channel for a while and have seen my updates previously, you'll know that that camera, for probably around 3 to 6 months of usage, I didn't have any motion detection on, because on that particular camera I literally just wanted to test how well it can actually do, how well these cameras can do in terms of battery life. And that camera got down to 11% battery life, and it was on 210 days. So even without any type of detection, and obviously it wasn't for the whole time. So from, I believe it was late November, December time, something like that. So maybe for the last 3-4 months, I've actually had motion detection enabled, but obviously originally I only had it as humans, so it would cut out any animals, anything like that. And then later I actually switched it to everything, and having plugged it in since, obviously I've turned that up even further, because that's the idea. I want to get to the point where I can have everything plugged in, and not have to worry about basically how much battery life is essentially left on these particular products. So the issue comes about when I originally first installed it. We've had pretty bad weather probably since it snowed a few maybe a month or so ago, so I've not really had a chance to put it up initially. When I did finally get around to doing it, obviously I wanted to try and get it done pretty quickly. So what I've done is I've connected it, I've taken a few pictures, and I've even cleaned the camera up in the process of doing so. The charging port on that particular camera didn't look corroded, it looked perfectly fine. I've connected it all up, hooked it up, come back to it the next day, having left it a full day. And yes, whilst we haven't had beaming sunshine, the first few days when I did install it, although it was freezing cold, it was actually quite clear, so we did have a little bit of sunshine every now and then, but it just wasn't doing anything. So it wasn't charging, and it wasn't when you switch to the solar panel mode, it just looked like the battery was still going down. It went down from 11% down to 10%, and when you switch back to battery mode, which you can do, and basically if you have it on solar panel mode, then in theory it's still charging with any excess charge, but if it's on battery mode, then it will just charge. So in the background, obviously your camera is still running directly off the batteries, and what's happening is the solar power is literally going straight in to charge the camera. Now what happens during any of these cameras charging is that you get a sort of notification on the home screen as well as in HomeKit, and having checked both, neither was showing that this particular camera was charging. Now obviously, having watched a few other videos, I did note that obviously these are meant as top-ups, so they're not designed to actually fully charge from basically a low battery percentage. So I thought to myself, maybe that's the issue. So maybe the battery was just too low, and it hasn't got, right now with the overcast weather, it hasn't got enough power to charge the battery up. So what I did was I took it off, took the camera down, put it on charge just behind me down there, and I used the same charger that I basically used to charge up my camera batteries. So it's the same micro USB charger, and it took 2.5 days to charge up this particular camera. So firstly, it's got me thinking that maybe there is something actually wrong with this particular camera, but what I've done is I've charged it fully to 100%, I've taken it outside, connected it all back up, plugged in the charger, tried both modes, so tried it in solar power as well as battery charging, and it's doing nothing. Basically, it doesn't give you any indication that it's charging or it's receiving any charge. Having tested obviously that generic charger a while back, that more or less instantly gives you a battery indication saying that it's receiving a charge. So this got me thinking, so I dug that one out again, and this morning I've basically just hooked that up temporarily. I've literally just thrown it on the top of my, basically the porch covering that I have at my front door. So right now my front porch camera is actually receiving a charge in exactly the same conditions, whilst the back garden one isn't. So the front porch one is receiving a charge from a cheap generic third-party third-party solar panel, and the genuine sort of Eufy product isn't doing anything. So at this stage I'm not really sure whether it's the camera, because obviously it did take way longer than it probably should in order to charge up, or whether it's the solar panel itself that is defective. Obviously the fact that it took me a few days to actually get this thing installed in the first place means that I want to try and get on top of this as soon as possible. So before I just send the product back, I have reached out to Eufy to see what they make of it. Their initial response was just a sort of generic response that comes out with regards to how to charge a camera and what sort of input it requires, which isn't much. I think it says something like 5 watt 1.4 amps or something like that. I can't remember the exact email, but either way, at the moment the way it stands is the back garden camera is fully charged, but it doesn't give any indication to show that it's receiving any input from the solar panel, whereas the cheap generic sort of charger that I've installed just temporarily, that is actually showing a charge. So that's showing that it's topping up the battery, and you can switch between solar panel and battery mode. I believe on either one, what it'll do is initially it'll just keep the camera running, and then any excess charge it will then feed back into the battery and top it up. Now I'm not, in the weather that we have, I'm not expecting it to top up much. because the porch camera is actually probably getting more usage than the back garden camera. But the only way I'll know is over the next few days. If the percentage drops on the back garden camera, then straight away you know that it's obviously not getting any particular type of charge from the solar panel, which is disappointing, because the idea was because of some of the things that they've actually included in this. So for example, the cable management. So the way you can wrap the cable around the back of the solar panel makes it so then your cable management can be a little bit neater. Now when I hooked this up, I wasn't actually, obviously I was rushing, it was just about to start raining, and I just basically wanted to get everything wired in, plumbed in and everything. So the cable is still loose, basically it's still dangling slightly, but it's a lot easier to tidy that tiny little bit of cable compared to the other solar panel. The other thing is this is white, which if I was to install this at the front of my house would actually go a lot better compared to the generic one, which is all black, so it would stand out a lot more. With the generic one, obviously you do have the option of mounting that higher. I can't remember the exact length of the cable, I think it might be exactly the same. This one's a 4-meter cable, so it's reasonably long, whilst at the same time being reasonably easy to actually hide away any of the excess cable. But yeah, that's basically where we stand at the moment. What I will do is I'll do a further update once I hear back with what the outcome is, whether they think it's the solar panel, whether they think it's the camera. I'm not really in a position to swap that camera with any of the other ones, for the simple reason that the back garden one's probably the most awkward one to get to, because it's actually mounted higher up and it's not accessible via a window or anything like that, as with my front driveway. The front driveway one, basically I just hung out my my bedroom window in order to install it. So whenever that needs charging, in theory I can literally just open the window and obviously take it off the mount and then charge it up. So whilst I would prefer to have the solar panel hooked up, it's not 100% necessary for that particular one. Whereas for the back garden one, it's more awkward taking it down, which is why if it can get obviously 24/7 power, then it makes it a lot easier for me. Plus obviously if I can get all three hooked up with power, it would have meant that I can actually increase both the sensitivity of the motion detection as well as increasing the time of which it records the clip. So right now I just have everything set to auto, so it's basically prioritizing battery life, whereas what I could do is obviously maximize the clip length to 120 seconds, which obviously affects battery life in the long run. None of these cameras, none of the Eufy cameras for me will last a year. All of them, even with heavy usage, will last between 3 and 6 months. So even if you're only having to charge your camera say twice a year, that's still not too bad, as long as it's accessible. So as long as you remember when to do it, it's not too bad. So from that point of view, if this does turn out to be a no-go in terms of the performance, then I'll probably just send it back at this point, because if it's proven that a cheap generic charger can do a better job, then what's the point of buying the original product? As far as the sealing goes, in terms of the sealing of the port, the charging port, at the moment it's just temporary, the one that I've hooked up, because that one is actually covered. So unless we get some freezing temperatures, it's unlikely that that's going to get any moisture in it. But the long-term thought behind that would be literally just some hot glue, just put it around the port, and that should hopefully stop it from becoming damaged or corroded as one of my other ones did. So yeah, that's the update. Unfortunately it's not good news, but I will keep everybody updated once I hear back from Eufy in terms of what they think the best way to go forward is. So in order to get that update, obviously if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel. Also hit that bell icon, that way you're notified and you won't miss out on any new videos. And if you have enjoyed this video and benefited from it, then I'd really appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Other than that, thanks very much for watching.